Several key landmarks here in the Washington area at low altitude today, including the Capitol, the Pentagon, CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, and Joint Base Andrews, home of Air Force One, of course. The flight was part of a long-standing treaty that allows militaries of the U.S. and Russia to observe the other from the air, according to two people familiar with the flight. The sources say a second flight is planned for this evening, and this one will fly over Bedminster, New Jersey, where the president is experiencing his so-called working vacation. The flights were approved by the United States government.
First of all, the Security Council is going to be adopting a very important presidential statement on the four famines, which for the first time links the four famines to conflict. You know, famines are caused now not just by the weather, not just by overcrowding, but by man-made factors, and particularly man-made conflicts, and it's important that this is on the Security Council's agenda. Secondly, the Russians are going to be updating us on the humanitarian situation in Syria. I hope that they will be telling us everything they have been doing to get the Syrian regime to do what they should have been doing for 5 years, namely to get humanitarian supplies into every besieged and hard-to-reach area. I somehow doubt that that's what they'll say, but that's what they should be saying. And then on North Korea, the UK continues to work very closely with the United States and with all our international partners to make sure that the DPRK is not able to pursue its nuclear and its intercontinental ballistic missile programs.
Isn't the President's comments on Tuesday, inflaming the situation? Is this how you persuaded Pyongyang to return to six-party talks and to back away from its own threats to bomb the U.S. and other countries?
The United Kingdom stands shoulder to shoulder with the United States in tackling this threat and many others. We are united in calling on the North Korean regime to halt its nuclear program. The whole of the Security Council has come together behind that, and I think that we should see the President's public comments as one of the many strands of U.S. activity.
But doesn't the U.S. hold an outsized importance when the President makes these sorts of comments? It's not as if this is Venezuela making the comments or Botswana making the comments. This is the United States, which is perhaps one of the two preeminent nuclear states in the world, making this comment.
The United States has been very clear about its position. The United Kingdom has been very clear about our position, and we call on the DPRK regime to listen to that clarity, to act on that clarity, to halt its nuclear program, to halt its intercontinental ballistic missile program, and it holds the key to sanctions being removed.
Is this going to hurt efforts to bring the six parties back to negotiations? And if not, how could this happen? What needs to be done?
What's hurting the six-party talks is the inability so far of the North Korean regime to do what it has to do, which is to halt its nuclear program and to halt its intercontinental ballistic missile program.
On Cameroon, yesterday three ministers of the Cameroon government met with the Deputy Secretary General about the issue in the Anglophone areas, something you've spoken about before. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you. No.
In the President's remarks and then in the Secretary's comments about the President's remarks, saying that it was the kind of language that North Korea would understand and almost in a way diplomatic speak. Is that an approach the State Department was involved in that the President took yesterday?
The State Department and the President, the Secretary and the President, have ongoing conversations. They spoke earlier today. This pressure campaign with North Korea is something that we are all in agreement on. Folks in the U.S. government are all in agreement on. So nothing has changed in that regard.
Sorry, can you just extrapolate? The President and the Secretary spoke today?
They did.
This is when he was in Guam or on the plane?
I'm not sure where exactly in transit, though, as he is on his way back to the United States, is my understanding. Exactly at what point or what time, I'm just not sure.
Clarified earlier today in which time zone?
I'm sorry, that's a good question, Andrea. It happened, let me get back to you on the time of that.
But it happened while he was en route back to...
I believe it was...
It wasn't last week or anything?
No. It was within the last 24 hours.
Any idea how long it was?
They spoke for about an hour.
So that means 2 calls in the last... since Monday.
I'd have to check with you on the first call that you're referring to. I'm not certain of that. I don't recall that.
A call of an hour with General Kelly and the President and the Secretary on Monday morning. Monday morning, East Coast time.
Okay. Right.
There you go.
I mean, so we have 2 calls now. All right.
Okay. Andrea, hi.
Hi. Could I follow up? The Secretary's call was, though, well after the fire and fury language. Senator McCain and others, Republicans and Democrats, have complained that it was, quote, bombastic in Senator Feinstein's view, not helpful, said Senator McCain, that no other president, not Eisenhower, not Reagan, no other president that he knew of would have used such language. And the implication from all of the critics is that the president's language implied the use of nuclear force. Is that the way the Secretary read it? And did the Secretary have any early warning from his earlier phone call that this was going to happen? Or did he only speak to the President in the aftermath?
He spoke to the President after the fact, after the President made his announcement. You know, as people look at this, and some consider comments to have been alarming, I would have to go back to this. Let's consider what is alarming. What is alarming: 2 ICBM tests in less than a month, 2 nuclear tests that took place last year. As a matter of fact, when there's an earthquake in China, I get many emails and calls from all of you asking, was it another nuclear test? That is how big of a deal this is, that what is going on. Let me finish. Okay, please. Sure. It is a big deal what is going on. It is a concern to the world, not just the United States. Those are alarming actions. They are provocative actions on the part of North Korea.
My question is, given those provocations from North Korea, which has been belligerent in the extreme, granted, stipulated, is it helpful or unhelpful for the President to use the kind of language that we have seen previously coming from Kim Jong-un, not from presidents of the United States? Is he exacerbating the
President spoke to him, to Kim Jong-un, in a language that Secretary Tillerson has said, and said this morning, in the kind of language that Kim Jong-un will understand. We would like to see results. The pressure campaign, we see that working. The international community is in agreement with the United States and many of our partners and allies on putting additional pressure on North Korea. The Secretary happens to be coming back from the ASEAN conference, where they had tremendous success. It was a good week for diplomacy. I know you all want to obsess over statements and all of that and want to make a lot of noise out of that, but what is important to keep in mind is that this diplomatic pressure at ASEAN, at the meeting of the 10 Asian nations along with the United States, came to a joint agreement and a joint statement and put out a very strong condemnation of North Korea. We are all singing from the same hymn book.
Could we possibly get a response from you, please, on the escalating rhetoric that we've seen from not only North Korea but also the United States?
Yeah, too bellicose a tone, isn't it? And that's what concerns us, as we were saying before. We were saying and continue to say that the military solution is not an option in any way, and that the resolution that we adopted is not an end in itself, that we have A, to work out a strategy, and B, to involve parties into the political dialogue. And Russia and China were proposing that constantly for more than a month now, in fact earlier, and we think that this plea for political dialogue and easing of tensions is becoming even more relevant now.
What would you say to Donald Trump, sort of in response to his remarks yesterday?
Look, who am I to engage in a conversation with the President of the United States? But we noted what he was saying. I think that our strong wish is that the United States keeps calm and refrain from any moves that would provoke another party into actions that might be dangerous.
Are you going to do anything to promote dialogue with North Korea? Is Russia going to do anything to promote dialogue?
Of course, we are ready to do whatever we can to promote dialogue, and through our embassy we are in contact with North Korean authorities. But I think that we should give it a time, because the tensions are too high at the moment, and you know that the reaction from the North Korean government was very strong and harsh, I would say, and that was reciprocated by from here. I think that we should give it a few days to come down, hopefully. As we said, we want the tensions to ease, and we have to start seriously about devising and inventing ways for the political dialogue on this issue.
Sorry?
You have criticized the U.S.-South Korean threat, but what is the U.S. supposed to do when you have ICBM launches headed towards the U.S., getting closer and closer?
You know that the Chinese initiative on double cessation and parallel tracks is a proposal to find a way out of that situation. The deployment of THAAD won't solve the problem of any ballistic missiles that another side may fire. You know that it was not meant to. I'm not a great specialist in armaments and in anti-ballistic, ballistic or other a technical specialist, but I understand that THAAD missiles won't be able to solve the ballistic launches if they happen again, for example. THAAD does not add anything to the strategic balance in the region. This is what the Chinese were saying all the time and continue to say, and we also were saying that this does not ease tensions at the peninsula. So I'm not sure that THAAD is the key to solving that problem.
Ambassador, on the diplomatic spat between the United States and Russia over the premises, the diplomatic premises, and the staff being sent back, the Americans, have you received any notice that you'll be losing any Russian staff from the UN mission here?
No.
Or are you expecting to?
I'm not expecting this. Our mission to the United Nations is in fact and should be out of the calculation of our bilateral missions because it's a separate diplomatic entity which is accredited to the United Nations, not to the United States.
Mr. Ambassador, what would Russia's message be to both President Trump and to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un?
Find a way to start a dialogue.
Mr. Ambassador, have you spoken to your American and North Korean counterparts since the language of the last 24 hours?
Myself?
Yes.
No.
Do you plan to? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
I think that our minister spoke to the North Korean minister in Manila at the ASEAN meeting last weekend. And all messages that had to be sent, they were sent there.
Ambassador, just back on the resolution that was adopted on Saturday, people are now saying it's a lot of this depends on Russia and China implementing the resolution. Can you tell us?
We are always implementing Security Council resolutions faithfully, so we will do it this time too.
And particularly on the issue of guest workers, how many North Korean guest workers are there in Russia?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Do you have trust that China will implement the resolution on sanctions? There has been strong criticism that Beijing doesn't always follow.
You should ask them about that, but China is also a responsible member of the international community, the permanent member of the Security Council, so why are you having doubts it will not?
Is anyone considering calling a meeting or consultations on this sort of escalating rhetoric that we've seen?
Not that I know for the moment. Do you have any other questions in North Korea?
How about the famine statement?
The famine statement, it has been adopted, so what?
You just had you raised under any other business Syria aid access. Can you tell us why you raised that?
Because you know that de-escalation zones in Syria are progressing. One has been installed, another in Eastern Ghouta, and now we are discussing the one that is north of Homs, and it is being patrolled by the Russian police. And we offered our colleagues, and in fact we encouraged the United Nations to step up their humanitarian assistance to those de-escalation zones, saying that our police would ensure that this humanitarian assistance would go to the right hands. People who are returning to their homes in these zones are in dire need of any kind of assistance. So we're encouraging the OCHA and our partners to take that into account and to step up their humanitarian affairs activities in this zone, in these areas. But of course, there are other areas in Syria where people also need humanitarian assistance. That of course was not forgotten.
Mr. Ambassador, was that the only message that you had for any other business item on Syria?
Yes. There was a letter by Defense Minister to Secretary General Representative de Mistura on that issue, and we wanted to brief our Security Council colleagues on it.
Can I ask you a different subject? I know it's early, and welcome to New York. What are your early impressions of your American counterpart? I know you met with her, and now
You've already asked me that question.
I didn't, but,
very positive. We cooperated, so we had good rapport, I think, and I'm hoping that it will stay that way in the future.
Ambassador
Who is saying here the last question?
Ambassador Haley is raising the beat against Hezbollah in Lebanon and the arms of Hezbollah. What do you think about changing or amending the mandate of UNIFIL in southern Lebanon?
We will come to discussing the mandate of UNIFIL later, I think this month. But we consider this operation very important for peacekeeping in the Middle East and especially in that area. We will be supporting UNIFIL. I will betray you a small secret beforehand, so no need to worry about it.
Thank you.
On our part.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for stopping, really.
Thank you.